have with me Sudhir Sethi, who requires very little introduction overall. But for those who don't know him, he's a founding partner of Chirate Ventures and a person who's really kind of very well immersed in the Indian product ecosystem. And I'm really honored to have this discussion with him around this topic of catalyzing Indian product ecosystem. And I think Sudhir, you have seen this right from the inception. I think you've seen it from the early days right up to now. But I just want to touch upon the fact that the theme of this conference is world class from India, which actually starts to connote the fact that we are no longer just fledgling product ecosystem or fledgling startup ecosystem in India. With 70 unicorns and counting, we are now at the stage where I think we are ready to take the leap to the next phase of how we actually start to build global businesses which are extremely successful over time. So Sudhir, I think I'll start off by asking you, kicking off this discussion between us, to really talk about, what would world class from India connote for you as we debate that theme.
So Ram, first, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure. Always learning to talk to you because you're an expert in this area. World class from India. World class from India is very simplistic. Entrepreneurs are world class from India. There is no question about it. Innovation agility is world class from India. No question about it. These things are no longer to be talked about as have we arrived. We have arrived. Next layer is, are we building businesses which are solving real challenges, which are world class and world scale. So to me, world class means customers globally and scale globally. And those are the crucial elements. And last but not the least is, can that product stroke company survive for 10, 20, 30 years? I think that's very, very important overall. So it's a traditional definition, I must add, but we have to overlay world class with intense agility, intense innovation, and intense solutions either in healthcare or in the technology space. Could include hardware, where what is coming out is not broadly a me too. It's not 3 more features. It is a brand new category of a product or a service which has never been found before. And those companies will exist for the long term.
Right. So that brings up the point, right? I mean, we saw a certain class of companies emerge, and they have now started taking strides which are much bigger. And as we were discussing earlier, off camera, a lot of times we keep focusing on the horizontals. We talk about technology areas, we talk about technology components. We don't really talk about it, like you rightly mentioned. Are we solving material problems in the world? And they could be emerging from any domain. And in fact, some of these are actually crossing over, right? I mean, some of the examples that we are starting to see is around, physical, digital. You're talking about synthetic biology. You're looking at, really some emerging companies from India in the space tech world, which you would not have associated from a startup ecosystem perspective. Are you seeing some, verticals that are starting to emerge more than others? When we think about verticals, are you starting to see more things coming up?
So I think, especially in the last 2 years, the world is full of challenges. And the people who are solving them are entrepreneurs. And I mean, the way we look at companies, this year we have seen about 3,000 companies, new ones. And give it another 2 years, we'll see 6,000. They're all innovative companies.
Yeah.
The way we see it is horizontal forms an important element of a product company. But the vertical is very important. And I'll give you a few examples from our portfolio because that's I'm very familiar with.
Right.
So there's a company called Emotix. It's a companion robot based on artificial intelligence, and it's for children. It's a conversational robot. And for one of the first time in the world, because children need to be protected from direct access between the ages of 5 to 12 from the internet. And this enables a child to learn. So this is our foray into education, as an example. And this company is poised in the next 2.5 years to become a $300 million company. The work for that had been going on for 4 years now.
Right.
Testing, finding global customers. And this is, of course, in the consumer space. So I'll come to the B2B space also.
Yeah.
But what they did was intense in terms of product development. Product development requires capital, requires testing, requires all the issues which you are familiar with, but it requires a certain period of time when traction from revenue will be low. And that's the investment and the risk which is there overall. So effectively, it's very important that innovation is built in such a way that it solves a real problem. And this found a real problem. We have a company called Pixis, which is in the advertising space. Advertising is a vertical. But with digital advertising, you can't go to conventional companies who take 3 months to build marketing channels. Okay.
Right.
And this is technology-based advertising. Okay. Unique. To the best of my knowledge, no such company exists in the world in the market space. Or a company like Unboxed, which is enabling brick and mortar retailers to go and build world-class online retailing, because brick and mortar retailers do not know how to do this. And there are so many examples in marketplaces. Unifor is a very good example in the space of voice-enabled, technology-enabled, addressing challenges that BPOs faces, growing phenomenally right now. These are very unique situations. So yeah, that's the point I'm making. World class is enormous, and these are all verticals. They're all verticals. Horizontal forms an element, not one, 5 layers underneath.
Yeah, but I mean, growing these businesses, as you rightly said, they start off, they've done deep research, they built the products, they're taking it to new markets, especially the robot which is addressing children. Now, when it go to consumer, that's a different space, right? I mean, we think about consumer, global companies from other countries who have come to India as consumer and then serving the consumer market here. But we have only now have emerging examples of where Indian companies are now going and servicing the consumer markets and other markets like in the US and other places. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you're seeing these companies are overcoming? It's not the product problem. Of course, developing the product requires market insight and consumer insight, but also channel building the right, partnerships, getting it to market, getting it adopted, right? There's a whole host of other things that they have to do to get there. Are they finding the talent available to do that? How do you see that?
So before I come to talent, Ram, if I may touch base on what entrepreneurs are doing and what investors are doing, right?
Right.
If you take the SaaS space as an example, now the biggest market for SaaS in the world is US. So to that extent, we believe that the ground reality must first come, which is the entrepreneur and part of his leadership team has to be based in the US. That's where you sell, that's where you innovate, that's where your competition is, right? So we tend to base our entrepreneurs there, even if we find them in India. We like the structures to be in India, but we tend to base them there. And that enables them to get into the ecosystem, because then every day in the morning, right, you're finding the edge, the pace of innovation in that entrepreneur space. If based in India is 15 degrees, you're facing a 60 degrees pace of innovation. Okay, and that helps the product become faster, lean and mean. You get into the network, you're talking to your customers every day, you're talking to competition every day, you're talking to investors every day. That's very important to be in the thick of the ecosystem overall. The next is in terms of talent. The layer of technology talent, I think the world will face always shortages. So to that extent, it's a good thing. Not only just pricing wise, how much talent costs, but to build a culture, to build focus on that in the beginning, of course, economics, and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of technology people love coming into something innovating, which is changing the world overall, not just one more company, right? I think that's very important. In some sense, I also say that one of the biggest jobs of the CEO, the founder, is a showman. He has to articulate this vision to the first 50 employees. It is so crucial, right? But the go-to-market is also where Indian companies tend to shortchange is, can I do marketing? Okay. Can we hire the right marketing people? Can we hire the right advertising people? Can we hire the right go-to-market sales people? Those, I think, have to be from outside the country. There is no question. So there's a learning of product companies on how to manage that go-to-market based on the local this thing and combine what we have in India and what we have outside the country. We have product companies also have to move away from the cheapest development to the appropriate development.
Yeah.
Low cost does not mean success. Low cost means controlling your costs. That's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can be done by developments here. But fundamentally, the front end engine of marketing, sales, customer support has to be based in the US.
Yeah. So Sudhir, let me ask you, prognosticating, right? Looking ahead 10 years from now. Do you see, I mean, this point you made about, the front end, right? The CEO, maybe the chief business officer, chief marketing officers is based in the market which they're primarily targeting. But, we don't see that in the US companies, right? I mean, they're based in the US and they have marketing to countries like us, right? I mean, think about your favorite social network that is being marketed to us. Do you see that as a future state ever? In the sense that we don't have to, like you may, you're relocating your CEO of an investee company to the US. Do we see that going away at some point? That people, they're as confident of sitting in India and being able to do this because they're not just looking at one market, but they're looking at a world market as a piece.
Not in the medium term, and I'll give you a reason.
Yeah.
And whether it's a consumer company or hypothetically in the olden days SAP and et cetera, and in the newer days Salesforce, etc. The US gives a leg up of enormous scale to these companies. For the first few years, and that could be up to 10 years, these companies don't need to come out. And in fact, many of them don't come out. So they built enormous scale, enormous agility, enormous product development, enormous everything to achieve market share and scale and competitive edge in the market where they are based.
Right.
Whereas in India, that market does not exist. In some sense, I'll give you an example in the consumer space. One of our companies, Lenskart, dominant market share in India.
Mm-hmm.
Now they don't need to go outside. They've already gone to the US, they've already gone to Singapore, and they need to hire whatever they need to hire, like a Facebook in India, country heads, and so on and so forth. That's it.
Right.
You take First Try, $500 million a year company, dominant market share. They've gone to the Middle East and they're going to go all over the world. So I think it's a case-to-case issue. If you don't build scale in the country, right, it's very difficult to build scale outside if you're not there.
So it depends on the business, like you're saying. It depends on whether the business is primarily targeted at a different market. You just happen to capitalize out of here.
Yeah.
And at some point they have to do that, or you have a big base here and then you grow from there. So great point that you're making. So I think we have only a few minutes left. So I want to touch upon a slightly different topic, which is about investments, right? Your expertise and not mine. All this discussion happening about IPOs and companies getting exits and, and the 70 unicorns that are getting built. I mean, 70 have been built till now. I don't know how many more will get before March. But whatever that number is, at some point, these companies are now reached the kind of the upper end of their private investment, potentially private investment trajectory, right? Now the investors are looking for an exit. The founders are looking for an exit. The company employees are looking for an exit. How do you see this thing playing itself out, right? I mean, a lot of our discussion was about early stage companies and investing in them. How do you see this? I mean, there's a lot of hype built around the IPO discussion. How do you see exits?
Yeah, I think we must defocus from IPO. The debate is on building great companies.
Right.
And that starts from day one. And capital is required. Why is capital required? Because company gets capital two ways. One is revenue from the customer, or if in the absence of revenue from the customer, you get it from the investor. When the revenue comes from the customer is good enough, then investor is not required. So to me, it's a very simple formula, right? To scale, you need capital later on. IPO is a phase in the life. Are we building? I mean, to me, it's very important that my company survive 10, 20, 30 years, right? Mindtree, one of our first companies we invested, is survived today. It may be under L&T, but that's fine, right?
Correct.
Building long-term companies is a phenomenal achievement. And IPOs is just one of the transit points there. So let's focus on building great companies. And that is a different forte. Entrepreneur, building it for 20 years and 10 years and 30 years, right? Sometimes the company gets sold because of investment reasons or whatever reasons. But fundamentally, there is the meaning of IPO to me is very simple. There's an opportunity for Indian companies to survive without selling. to prosper without selling, to become dominant in global markets without selling the company. And that is today a reality, whether it is in the consumer space, whether it is in the SaaS space, right? Whether it is in some other space. So to me, IPO is an indicator of I will continue this company for a long time. And by the way, if I'm not there as an entrepreneur or an investor, somebody else will.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I think that's a great point made, that our long-term focus should be on building large, sustainable organizations around the world, great places for people to work in, great for their customers, and then winning the markets by the fact that they continue to innovate and they remain agile. I think that's the point you made in the beginning. Agility is not something that you lose as you grow bigger. Agility is something that you maintain through your lifetime as an organization. And I think catalyzing this out of India for the world market and world class from India, I think is a natural progression in our minds in terms of how things will happen. But it requires a village to help these companies get there. And I think that's the focus of this conference anyway, is the fact that how does that village come together? And we have a great village. I mean, I think, Sudhir, we have to admit that the ecosystem in India is actually not easy to replicate in other parts of the world.
It's very tough. And I think congratulations to even NASSCOM and the full ecosystem here, because that ecosystem is so vibrant, right?
Yeah.
And you can't have hard boundaries on that ecosystem. The nature of the beast is it needs soft boundaries. It needs to evolve, right? And that rapidly, if it evolves rapidly, you must allow it to, don't constrain it. That is what is there in India today. And that is going to take more companies global. I mean, 40% of our 70 companies have gone global today. Right. And by the way, a bulk of them went global in the last 2 years.
Yeah. And that's an amazing feat. So that actually talks to the evolution that is already happening in the ecosystem. Thank you, Sudhir. Enjoyed the discussion as always, and look forward to continuing this as we continue this process over the next few years.
Thank you, Ram, and for this, and all the best. And we look forward to many entrepreneurs going and building companies out of India for the global markets and successfully. And I'm very sure the world will depend in due course of time, especially in the SaaS area, on Indian companies.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.